Buy Bitcoin. Just buy Bitcoin. The ETF is a scam. Don't buy the ETF. It's not real. It's not real. It's only exposure to the Bitcoin price. But just so happens that the Bitcoin price has nothing to do with the fundamentals of what Bitcoin is and how it operates. What? What do you mean? It's not just a number go up technology? It's not just a speculative asset? Yes, bro. That's what I'm telling you. Yo, and welcome back to another episode of the Nyc Griff Show. Today is January 8th, 2024. It's 7:54 p.m. It's a Monday night, Griff, and we're filming. You had some case. You had a case that you picked up on Saturday. Got to go mine that fiat so you can stack some sats. But how was your weekend, Griff? How was your week previous?
It was good. I got like some free money on this Prize Picks things, and it was legalized in California to bet on this app. And so I was gambling all weekend on this app because I won originally. Of course, this is how it always starts. I win, and then I think I know everything, and then I lost all my winnings. And so now it's just like, okay, back to square one of just watching games for entertainment. But no, you know what's crazy about the weekend cases and everything is healthcare in this country is so, what's a polite word for it? Jacked. It's just messed up. I mean, like the people that you need to take the most care of have the smallest spread for facilities. And the thing nobody wants to talk about in healthcare is that you have to run a profitable business. But you know what hasn't kept up with inflation specifically, Nick? Medicare fees. None of it has kept up with inflation. Hasn't kept up with inflation since Obama took office, since we socialized medicine. And so a lot of the cases that I take on are like these add-on cases for necrotic feet and things like that. And they get thrown to the weekend because they need to get these people out of their hospital. They need them to heal up. But Monday through Friday, it doesn't make enough money in the old OR for them to just bring them in. So I'm the weekend guy. They call me the tissue guy. It's always good to have a nickname and things like that. But it's interesting. I mean, like I talked about on the other one, like Starbucks bathroom codes, I think there's 7 digits now on the bathroom codes. So we just keep going up in number of digits per Starbucks bathroom code. But hey, we're stacking cases.
What do you think
sats along the way.
Griff, what do you think causes that degradation of society over time? What do you think that this is?
We for sure shouldn't look at the money. We should not look at the money. You know, easy money.
There's no way. There's no way that the Bays are taking advantage of that. No, that couldn't be.
There's no way that you sit in a money and banking class like we were talked about at Albany, and you're with the head of economics at the university, and he's like, "Yeah, so like too big to fail," and you're just like, "But like what? Like how does that work?" And he's like, "Oh, it doesn't," and I'm like, "Okay, like so then what are we doing here, and how are we going to move forward?" But no, none of it makes any sense. And that's just the thing. Once you get outside the box of fiat, it almost changes your perspective on absolutely everything that you do every single day. And you realize very quickly how many scams exist, like within each market. What is propaganda? What is ad revenue really doing? There's just so many things. And what does it do to the most important things in our society? Like, I don't know, World War. Why is World War always coincided with the easiest times of money? Why is America following the same exact path that every predecessor did with the world reserve currency? All of these things. And then you're just living in it. You know, you're living in Rome a little bit, realizing that Rome's about to collapse. And now it's like, what do we do? Well, what do we do? I stack sats. I don't know about you, Nick. Do you stack some sats?
I did, but I lost them all in a freaking boating accident, man. It's just...
Yeah, I'd like to clarify. I've lost my biggest stack. It's gone. The seed phrase, I was just a dummy. Like I self-custody my Bitcoin instead of buying it on an ETF, you know. And
you should have just kept it on an exchange, Griff.
I should have just bought it on Coinbase, man. If I just bought it on Coinbase, then you know there'd never be a threat of anybody rug pulling me.
Yeah, you know, really, I'm
crazy,
excited. I'm excited for the Bitcoin ETF to get approved because once it does, then I can go ahead and move that risk over to the issuer. And I don't have to self-custody anymore. You know, that would be, that's really going to be a big time.
I don't want my own money. I don't want my own money. You know what I'm excited about though is like for the first time ever, we have somebody on this podcast tonight, not this morning on a Saturday morning, but tonight we have somebody that's in California, from California, been in California. He also is a former student athlete like ourselves because we're both former quarterbacks that did get a free education, whatever a free education is worth nowadays when they're just handing it out and also canceling all the debt. But it's the very first time I think personally, like I've ever had anybody on the podcast that I probably like, we're going to be speaking the same language a lot where I'm like, yep, so you've lived it and I've lived it. And it's a really interesting experience that it's going to be cool to share with some people, but let's get into it. Nick, let's get into it. Let's get somebody on.
Today we are honored to bring on Twitter at Big Sean Harris. We're excited to have a conversation with you, Sean. Welcome on to the Nyc and Griff Show. How you doing today, Sean?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Nyc and Griff. I'm excited to be on your show today. Sounds like we got a lot of fire ready to go. So I'm ready to get into it. Let's do it.
Griff, do your deal, man. You got so much energy about you. You just go, man.
So Sean, I know you're from Northern California. I know you went to Rockland, then you took the JUCO route. Both of us, we're all actually JUCO athletes. So shout out to us because we actually know the real grind.
Yes.
But you went to
the fun grind.
CC. It's an interesting one for sure. You learn a lot going to a junior college in California. Yeah. It's actually like the only part of the education system out here that I'm like not completely broken. Like it's kind of cool how they do junior college out here.
Yeah.
But I'm just giving a quick overview. Then I'm gonna ask a question. Goes to Yuba City. Gets a scholarship. Goes to Utah State. Goes and plays overseas. I haven't seen you at a pickup gym yet, but that might be because I just totally busted my knee playing that as soon as I came out here. I don't know if you have any advice for those that want to play basketball even after they shouldn't. But just like a little bit about like what your story is, like how you got there, and also maybe a little bit about why Sean wanted to get a free education so badly. Like, was that really important in your upbringing? Because it's like, that's the major thing that I was talked to about. It's like, hey, get a free education. Everything else will just take care. It'll all just take care of itself. Talking to a bunch of people who,
just fund your 401k, Griff, and it'll all be all right.
Yeah.
It's all automated. But yeah, we'd love to hear a little bit more about your story. Cause I'm like, you were in Rockland. Yeah. And you were the best high school player, or like, why did you end up at a junior college? What is your story behind that?
So yeah, I was one of the top basketball players in my region. I was first team all Sacramento Metro when I was a senior. So I was definitely one of the best players around. But I didn't get any Division I scholarships. I graduated when I was 17 years old, so I was still pretty skinny. I was like 6'7", probably 185 pounds. And so now, now I'm a lot more than that. But when I'm playing, I'm probably like 225, 235, in between that range. And so so I went to JUCO because I thought that I was good enough to go Division I. I just felt like I'd played against guys who were going Division I, and I was like, I think I'm good enough to do it. I think I can. And so I didn't want to set like back in those days, you couldn't just hop from one school to another like you can now. So you really had to be, unless you went the JUCO route, then you could hop from JUCO to another school, and you don't have to sit out a year. Okay, yeah. So that's it. What I ended up doing was I went to JUCO. I played at Yuba College. After probably, I think, our second tournament, I got my first scholarship offer to a Division I school, and then I ended up having over 10 Division I scholarship offers by the end of the season. So it was a ton of fun for me. I was balling out, and and not much had changed. I just got, Sacramento doesn't really get scouted that well. So at least back then it didn't. So, playing junior college was another level for me to play at, where I could actually get scouted and get looked at by different college coaches. And, I had a lot of different things that happened. And eventually I ended up making it to Utah State, which was a perfect fit for me. I have my lifelong friends are still from Utah State. And so, some of the guys that I played basketball with up at Utah State, my friends to this day, more than that I met over 10 years ago, still, we still are lifelong friends. And so it's worked out great for me. I'm not sure if that's
So you weren't a grade issue. There were no grade issues coming out of high school. It was just like a scouting issue, basically. Like you just weren't getting any exposure at your high school.
Yeah, exactly. I could have. There's no grades at all. Like the grades were fine to go to college. It was literally just the exposure. And I think possibly that I was a little bit younger and still kind of growing into my body. I hit puberty a little bit later than most guys did. So I was still pretty tall and skinny, but I mean, I was playing varsity as a sophomore. I got first team all league my sophomore year, and then I got first team. What'd you say?
No, it's just a big deal out here when you get first team something in Ohio. You know what I mean? It's like, all right, it's sick. Like if you're, you can put a ball in a basket, you're probably getting first team something. In California, when you win something, I always have a little more respect because I'm just like, hey, that's it's pretty impressive. I was like, there's a lot of people out here, and athletics is definitely like a center focus for high schools. So
to win state's not easy in California. So props to the guys who do that. I never did. I never won state, but I did get, in our conference, right, that I was playing in. As a sophomore, I got first team all league, which was pretty cool to me. I was like, whoa, I'm a sophomore. And I was just happy to play varsity. And then I went out and I was killing it. And then it was like, whoa, I got first team all conference as a sophomore on the varsity team. And then the next year, same thing. And the next year I got MVP of our conference and first team all metro. So I knew, obviously, I was like, okay, I'm pretty good at basketball. And I just wanted to keep playing. To me, it wasn't, you asked the question, was the whole thing about getting a free education, right? Because it's not a free education. There's no such thing as like scholarship is earned, you don't, and don't mention all the time you give up in the summer, all the time you give up during the season, the early morning workouts, the late nights, the travel, the flights, the in basketball, you have road trips where you're going in the middle of the week and you're missing a ton of school. So, for me, it wasn't, I always knew I was going to go to college, but just like what you said, that was just like the plan given to me. It was like, okay, this is what you do. This is the steps in life, and then it's like, once you graduate college, then it's like, well, what do you do? And I think that's one of the issues is, as growing up, is, a lot of kids nowadays have this issue. Everything's so mapped out. And then it's just like, what you're supposed to do until a certain thing, which is graduating college.
It's okay. Go do your deal now.
Yeah. And then at that point, then it's like, now be a man. It's like, no, maybe you should learn to be a man a little bit earlier. Maybe you should start learning how to be a man a little bit earlier in life, and that'll help you out. So there's little things that you're just trying to learn along the way of, hey, what am I going to do? How am I going to make money? How can I support a family, when the time is right to have a family? So all those things you're trying to learn along the way.
And you graduated from Utah State when? What year?
I graduated. So my last year I played was 2015.
And then you went overseas and you really just got back. Like you went overseas and you just came back. So that was what? I mean, almost 8 years playing professionally overseas.
Yeah. And I had 2 years in the middle of that where I'd stopped and I came back and I was working in a software company.
What do you do for work now?
I'm an administrator for a skilled nursing facility, old folks home. So I'm in the healthcare world as well, Griff. So I know that.
Oh, he's speaking the wound care. He's speaking the wound care language right now. I'm sure BioTissue would love to be all over it. But when did you find Bitcoin? Like, what was the moment for you? Because being overseas, you have experienced that. Yeah. Nobody really has. You've seen life over there. You've seen life over here. You've also just been an athlete the whole time. And as I put the athlete thing, unless you're making millions of dollars, you don't even really get to see the actual residuals from that until you go back into the workforce and you're like, oh, you guys are telling me this is how I have to work hard. I work hard. Like I learned fast, but what was like the Bitcoin moment for you among this journey?
So I guess it probably started a while back. I mean, when I was in Finland, that was one of the first places I went to that they paid me. They would pay me. I was in Finland, and I would get part of my paycheck. I'll get the majority of my paycheck sent to my bank account in the United States, and then I would get cash in euros to like spend around in Finland, you know. And so, but every time I would get that deposit to my bank account in the US, there would be like a $35 fee, or, you know, I don't know how big of a fee, but there'd always be a fee that I would see. And it kind of pissed me off. Like, I'm losing money every time I get money deposited, you know, because normally I'd worked other jobs before. And when I get a direct deposit, it wouldn't cost me anything, but there's like an international wire transfer fee or something. And so that would kind of make me mad. But that was before I really even knew. That was before I even heard about Bitcoin. I guess what really tipped me off was I had a teammate in 2017 who mentioned Bitcoin one time, and I was like, what is that, you know? And I was in Portugal, and he was like, I don't know, I think it's money or something. I was like, what do you mean it's money? What is this? Like, what is this Bitcoin thing, you know? So then I just started like, I was just wanted to study it. And so I would just kind of like Google it, and it didn't make any sense what I was reading. And so then I don't know what happened, but I was like, I want to understand. It was like, I can't figure this thing out, and I want to know what it is, because some guy mentioned this, and then we watched a movie about this kid using Bitcoin to like sell drugs or something, you know? And I was like, what is this thing? Like, what is this money thing that they're talking about? And I was like, man, I don't know much about any of this. And so then that was in 2017 where Bitcoin had this huge rise, and I didn't buy any because I was listening to some podcasts, and I was listening to a lot of these altcoin podcasts. And every week they had like a new altcoin that was doing the ICO thing at that time. And like it was another ICO, like initial coin offering, what was the thing back in the day. And they just kept doing it, another one after another one. And like at first I was like writing it down. I was like, okay, what's this one? Oh, okay, this one does that. This one does this. And then by like the fifth one, I was like, none of this makes sense anymore. I don't understand any of this for. And so I kind of backed away. I just backed away because I was like, this doesn't make any sense now. And then at that time, I stopped playing in 2018. So I came back home, and I was just like, this is kind of a long story, but I'll get to the point pretty soon. So I came back home. I started working a job, and I was just like, man, all this, like, you know, I was just worried about what am I going to do for retirement? I think that was one of the biggest things. I was like, I don't want to work until the day I die. And so the thing that I wanted to figure out was just, okay, how do I make money, or how do I keep the money that I have? And so I just went down this huge what is money rabbit hole, and I just started studying. You know, the first book I read was The Richest Man in Babylon, which basically just talks about, you know, making sure that you make more than you spend. Don't spend more than what you make, so that then you can save your money, and then make that money that you save work harder for you than you did to make that money in the first place. And that was literally like the whole gist of that book. And then I was like, okay, well, how do I make the money that work harder for me? And then I started reading, you know, other books, the Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And, you know, obviously he talks about the whole real estate thing, and you get into house hacking and all that other stuff. And then it, like, one day it kind of just, I was trying to figure out money, and I was watching CNBC every single day, which that's like the channel with all the stocks on the tickers on the bottom. And they talk about bonds, and they talk about real estate, and they talk about ETFs, and they talk about everything that you could ever think of that's in the financial industry. And I learned the language of finance just because I would Google anything I didn't know, and I would YouTube anything I didn't know. And I was reprogramming my brain unknowingly, because I just wanted to learn, how do I have money when I'm done working? Like,
You're starting to sound like a Bitcoiner, Sean.
Yeah. Or if I want to retire, or if I don't want to retire, but I want to do what I want to do, how do I have money? Right. That's what I wanted to know. But at that same time, I was still like listening to these Bitcoin / altcoin podcasts, and every once in a while they throw in like nuggets about Bitcoin that made a lot of sense. And it would be like, oh, there's the 21 million cap, there's no inflation, there's the halving event, there's all these other things, and then they would talk about fiat, but then they would mention all these other coins that didn't make sense. And so it's like slowly I was like coming around to this thing of like, oh, Bitcoin's, when they talk about Bitcoin, it makes a lot of sense, when they talk about anything else, like nothing else, I wanted to know too, like, well, what about Ethereum? Does Ethereum have a halving? Like, because I noticed that everything kind of followed Bitcoin's, ups and downs, its volatility. And I looked up Ethereum and I was like, no, there's no halving in Ethereum. I was like, okay. And I was just like, automatic. That's fake. That's fiat. Like as soon as I saw that, I was like, look, it just follows. It follows Bitcoin's coattails. That's what it does. And so there's just like all those things started to make sense as I was doing all this study. And then it's like, boom, it's like, what is money? And then it got to the sound, like then I got to the sound money, Bitcoin, and then it all made sense at one time. And all those roads converged, which is normal. All roads do lead to Bitcoin if you do search long enough. And so that's what ended up happening with me was I decided that I wanted to keep learning. And because I kept at it, then I eventually got back to Bitcoin. But now it made sense. Bitcoin actually made sense. Where in the beginning, I was reading and I didn't understand anything. And I had to get myself up to speed. And it took about 2 years. And so in 2019, that's when I first started buying Bitcoin after all of this started to make a lot more sense.
Sean, I think, whenever I have conversations with people, and Griff and I have talked about this extensively, how good of a conversation or how in-depth of a conversation can you really have with somebody if they haven't studied what that topic is, right?
Yeah.
And then on the Bitcoin side, how can you really understand Bitcoin if you don't understand the problem that it's actually solving? And then even further than that, how can you really understand Bitcoin if we've not gone down to the fundamental of what is money and how do I, just like you're saying, how do I earn this money stuff? And then how do I keep it and then like make it work for me? It's like, how do you can't really answer things and formulate kind of your own opinion and strategy with which to move forward if you don't do the research. So applause to you and all the rest of the Bitcoiners out there that are doing the work. See, this is the part. You can't understand this stuff. You can't get into this space and do something of meaning if you've not done the work. You got to do the work, which I think is beautiful because the decentralized consensus mechanism of proof of work is it's in the words. It's in the words. Proof of work. Proof of work. I've got a handful of guys that I'll go to the gym and I'll send them a picture and I'll say capital P, lowercase o, capital W. Proof of work. Yeah. I was at the gym, right? And it's like you can't really be in Bitcoin and understand Bitcoin and really have conviction in that, especially when the dollar price is going down, right? When you're in a bear market, if you don't understand the fundamentals of what Bitcoin is, and you've not done the work to understand what the fundamentals of Bitcoin are, then what are we doing? Then it's just a speculative game, which is like then we're right back into fiat mind,
Well, yeah, I think part of it is just understanding, like you got to try to understand what money is and going down that rabbit hole of what is money. I mean, think about for you guys, when you're in a huddle, for football, you guys are talking to each other, but if some random casual off the streets went into your huddle, they would have no idea what you guys are talking about, right? But you guys set up and line up, boom, and everyone knows where they need to go because you guys have a language that you've learned, and that language is learned because you've worked at it. And it's the same thing. If you work at what is money, that is something that you have to understand at a deep level. And I think one of the biggest conceptions or misconceptions about money is that it's only something, when I talk about Bitcoin to people, they say, well, where can I spend it? And it's like, then you have to go, then I have to go back to store of value, medium of exchange, unit of account. I have to go back to that. It's like, come on, guys, you can learn what these things are. But they go, no, where can I spend it? Where can I spend it? It's like, it's more than just spending. Money has more value than just being able to spend it. And so I think there's just little things that are like that along the way. When you get to talking about Bitcoin, I think there's a lot of misnomers and misconceptions about money in the first place, because people, the way that fiat, it's actually kind of a genius thing that fiat is. It's like an evil genius, because fiat it's programmed to push you down that line where it's no longer a store of value for you anymore. So throw that one out, because now people don't understand that. They don't recognize a store of value as part of money, because you have to put it into stocks or bonds or real estate. You can't keep your wealth in the currency. And because you can't keep your wealth in the currency that you're actually using, then the knowledge of money is lost, because people who don't study it won't naturally just understand it, because they don't use their money that way.
My question kind of is, because you were playing a little bit after you were a Bitcoiner, more or less, in 2019. Yeah. Was the conversation of Bitcoin more well received overseas versus now that you're back in the States? I don't even know if you're like me, where I'm just like getting a little bit tired of everybody in the States, where it's just like, okay, man, like, no, I get it. Like, we have a really great life here. I understand why you love the dollar so much. I understand why the dollar is basically your best friend. Like, I get it. I totally understand. Depends on how much fiat you have and what your assets are denominated in. But was the conversation more well received over there than it is here now that you've been back, or vice versa?
I would say it's pretty similar. It's still pretty similar. Yeah, I did have a teammate from Argentina though who picked it up. Like, I played in Spain the last 3 years, so I had a teammate from Argentina who picked up Bitcoin so fast. Like, it was incredible. And it was funny because at the beginning of the season, he showed me this gold. It was a gold-backed crypto that was some people in Argentina were releasing. And I was like, dude, I'm telling you, man, all of this stuff, like, you can't back it. Like, what is backing? And this goes to another thing, like, talking about what does backing mean? Backing literally meant back in the day that you could swap out. You could go to the bank, swap out your dollar note for a certain amount of ounces of gold, and they would have gold in reserve, and they would give you the gold, and you would exchange that for your IOU note, and that's what it meant to be backed by gold. You could actually swap it out. And so, and then, that term just gets like a little bit changed, and the truth gets changed a little bit over time. And then it's like, oh no, it's not that. It just means that in our reserves in Fort Knox, we have enough gold. We're hoping that you believe us. And, but it was funny because he told me about this crypto that was gold backed. And I was like, dude, it's Bitcoin only, man. And he was like, okay. He kind of just like believed me on that point. And then towards the end of the year, he came back to me, and at the end of the season, he was like, remember that gold backed crypto I was telling you about? He's like, the founders left. No one can get their money out. The thing went to zero. I was like, I told you that was a rug pull waiting to happen, And so it was fun. And then his eyes were really opened. But at that time, he was already Bitcoin only. But that just kind of like really helped him understand why Bitcoin only.
Well, it's so funny because the way I got into Bitcoin now that Nick knows, my really good friend JC, he's just a conspiracy theorist, where I'm just like, I don't even know if that's the thing anymore. Being a conspiracy theorist, it's just like, so that guy knows things and you don't know anything. But he was like, no, buy Bitcoin. He's like, this was like maybe the winter of 2019. So like, obviously I got to get into it when the price appreciation happened like that. And my FOMO was just unbelievable. It was like, I still remember it. That's why I'm buying Bitcoin so heavily right now. It's like, yeah, there are times you want to buy more than others for sure. But here's the thing. You just always want to buy it. You never want to not buy it. Like, not buying it is no good. But coming back to the States now that you're kind of getting into more of a, I guess, corporate America setting, if you will, The one thing that, and I've been getting into it with coaches on Twitter and a lot of former coaches, because I talked to a lot of my former teammates, and like mining fiat isn't easy still. Like it's nice to be in the States where it's better than maybe being in Argentina or I don't know, Egypt or anywhere else. But mining fiat isn't easy. And $100,000 jobs, it used to be like you make 100K. Like I wrote it in a notebook when I was leaving Albany. I was like, hey, let's just make 100 grand. And I think I'll be fine. You know what I mean? I'll be okay. Well, then I moved to California and pretty quickly I'm like, I'm not saving enough. Like I'm trying to save money fast, guys. I'm trying to save a high percentage of my dollars. And it's almost impossible to do that. It doesn't even make a whole lot of sense. But when you were in college, did you ever have any NIL issues, or like, were you ever like, do you feel a little exploited? Like now after going over there, coming back, do you feel like the degree that you got has a lot of intrinsic value, or do you feel like you're the one with intrinsic value and the degree is just like it opened the door, maybe like in some settings, but the value of your degree, like if you had a kid and you were like, hey son, play basketball because it's going to get you a free education, and that free education is just going to automatically poof, like you just get to make a bunch of money. Me and Nick were talking about how like really being athletes taught us what to do versus what not to do more than anything. But the degree factor, like when you came back to the States and you had a degree and all of this background, did the degree really help you that much? Or was it more just like kind of who you were, what you know, things like that?
So the degree helped me because it was like a requirement. It was a requirement for my specific job to be licensed as a nursing home administrator in the US. You either have to have like unlimited years of experience or a degree. So that's where the degree helped me out. But I didn't get the job because of my degree. I actually got my job because of the people that I knew, specifically from playing basketball in college, actually. So that's why I got my job. But if I didn't have my degree, then I wouldn't be able to have my job because of the licensing requirement. Is, in my opinion, it's kind of stupid, But I get that's the world that we live in, and so you kind of have to play by the rules of the world that we live in if you want to get more Bitcoin. And so I would say, with my kid, like playing sports is great because you just get to learn how to play in a team. You get to learn how to get your skills better. You learn how to work hard at something. You're trying to achieve something in a team, in a group setting, which is going to be imperative for your whole life. Like you can't do anything by yourself. There's nothing that you're going to be able to accomplish that's great by yourself. Like Satoshi Nakamoto, only person ever to do that. But I'm sure he probably had some mentors along the way, And so, and maybe it was more than one person. Who knows? So
something you talked about a second ago, Sean, or earlier was, traveling in the middle of the week and missing classes. And the early morning lifts and the late night film sessions, all of these things that we could talk ad nauseum about. I mean, Griff and I were just talking before we started recording about the discipline and the consequences that came when you show up late to a lift. Oh my God. Okay, so what's going to happen to me now? That's a real fear that has really instilled a lot of discipline and almost like fear of undisciplined living in some sense. And but then the time management that comes with that, I always like to say, and I don't know who came up with this, but I saw it somewhere. But as a college athlete, there's a kind of a trilemma, if you will, where there's three options. They are athletics, academics, and a social life, but you can only pick two.
Yeah.
And we all know those boneheads that are boneheads. List guys, if you will. They're always on the list. You guys got to stay after and run extra. Whatever it is, right there. We all know those list guys that are out there. But man, I mean and I was just telling Griff too. Like I'm in the marketing business development world, and I have a marketing degree. And everything that I learned in classes, not one thing that I'm doing today is exactly what I learned. Now, maybe concepts, topics, ideas, certain things like that. Sure, there's kind of some overlap there, right? But generally, though, like everything that I learned in college that is applicable today is around time management. It's around discipline. It's around, hey, this kind of sucks, but I just got to do it anyways because that's kind of the rules of the game. And it's weird too, right? We start thinking about what are the rules of the game and how do we play the game. If we want to, if we live in this fiat world and we want to win, and by win in the fiat world, let's just say it's strictly financial. We want to earn as much money as we can. Money? What is money? I don't know. Dollars? I don't know. We want to earn as much dollars as we can. And now that we're who we are today, we want to then turn that dollar into as much Bitcoin as we can.
Yeah.
And so it's so wild to think about college athletics. And you got to experience professional athletics as well in different parts of the world, which is a cool experience.
Yeah, I want to touch on a point that you said, which is the game, right? Because there's a lot of people out here who don't understand that we are in a game, making money, obtaining money, saving money, having money is a game. And we are in and a game is just a competition with set rules, right? And so the way I look at it is we are in a competition, and the people who think that we're not in a competition, like, they're the ones that lose because they don't realize that every person around them is competing.
Yeah.
And so this is the whole thing about inflation is that inflation is the thing that steals from you when you don't even know that it steals from you. And so that was something when I was going down that money rabbit hole was, I need to invest, but what's the number that I got to hit? And I thought maybe I should at least hit inflation. And so then I started, because I heard about inflation, I was like, oh, I hear it's like 2 to 3% a year. And then you like dive into, well, why is there inflation? And then it finally made sense. I was like, oh, it's literally because they're printing money. It's literally because they're adding more money into the total broad supply of money. Whatever we currently have, they add more every year. And that's why prices go up, not for any other reason. And, generally, obviously, there's going to be supply chain restraints. There's going to be demand, issues and different things like that in certain products. But overall, it's just because they add more money to this whole supply of money, but they give it to themselves, to their friends, to their cronies before it ever reaches the normal people like us. And so that's what brought me back to Bitcoin, because I was like, I got to get myself in something that's going to move with inflation, but not at the rate that they tell us inflation's at, but actually at the true rate of inflation, which is how fast they're debasing the dollar. And that's if you look back at tweets, back in 2021, I think it was Jack Dorsey talked about hyperinflation, and everyone freaked out on him. But if you look at Bitcoin, if Bitcoin is a measurement of the debasement of the dollar, then we are in hyperinflation. If you look at Bitcoin's rise since 2009, that we're in hyperinflation of the dollar. If you just look at Bitcoin as a measurement of the debasement of the dollar.
Ray Dalio, Changing World Order. Have you either watched the little YouTube clip that's a great summary, or read the book?
So I watched the video of How the Economic Machine Works by Ray Dalio, that 30-minute video. I haven't read his book, but
yeah,
overall I like what he says. Obviously not what he talks about Bitcoin, but I do like what Ray Dalio says.
Yeah.
In general.
But it's like you said, like we're in a game, and every single time there's a world reserve currency, they followed the same exact pattern that they followed forever. And the only difference now between the British Empire, the Dutch, the Romans, all these guys, is at the very least, gold was still a thing. So now we're at this point where the market is driven by, incentives that we can't even fathom, because we don't have tens of millions of dollars. We're not playing the game they're playing. We can't play the game that they're playing. And the American dream is effectively, it's been gone for like a long time. Like if you don't realize what the game is, or that there's a housing hack. I think Robert Kiyosaki's kind of backed off of his stance there a little bit, where he's like, it was nice to own these things. Now it's like, it's kind of like a college degree. how many more of them are there? Scarcity is the measure in which we should measure everything in society, and Bitcoin is the most scarce. So therefore, probably going to be fairly. Bitcoin might be worth a few dollars, like in the future. You never really know. But the Ray Dalio thing, I think, is interesting because I don't know about you, but well, the only thing that's interesting to me about it is that pretty much the world stage is being set right now for us to go to war. Like we've gone to war, like every world reserve currency has gone to war for, well, forever. And one of the bigger things we talk on this podcast, it seems like with every guest, is I don't know what your thoughts are on the world stage a little bit and how Bitcoin fits into this, but Bitcoin is not only like an inflation hedge, but do you see it as kind of like a hedge on just like the entire game itself? I mean, everything, war, propaganda. I mean, like, where do you think Bitcoin fits into the bigger picture here? Because a lot of people think Bitcoin is like, well, it could be the reason why we're going to world war at this point. It could be the reason why we're doing what we're doing, because they realize that their game is over and now they're trying to start, ETFs and whatever. And I'm always really good at asking long-winded questions. But do you study world history a lot, or do you talk about a lot of your podcast? And I guess like the second ladder to that is, where does Bitcoin fit? Like, where does it fit at this point? Where does it fit? Is it just an inflation hedge to you?
Are you asking me if how often do I think about the Roman Empire? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yes. That's exactly what we're asking. Yeah.
I'm just playing. Okay, let me break down my answer for you if I can get it right. I think that number one, I don't think Bitcoin's a hedge on inflation. I'm just going to put that out there, because I think it's an opt-in to a new system or an opt-out of the old system to opt into a new system. So I don't think it's a hedge, where a hedge would just be like you're still kind of in that system and you're protected in that system. Where to me, Bitcoin is like you get out of it, you get out of that system, and you're into a new one. So
it's good.
Also, I do think that humans are gonna human, and history is gonna history. Which, as sad as that is, I think that happens over and over again. People want power, they want money, and Bitcoin does fix incentives. And so I think the incentive structure of humans can be fixed. But I think there will still probably be wars. I think there will still probably be people who want total domination, who want to be authoritarian leaders because they just want to. And there will be people who want to watch other people suffer. But with Bitcoin, what it stops people from using the central bank to be able to supply their endless wars. So just like in the old days, if you ran out of gold, you ran out of war. And I think that's the same thing in the future. Is what we're getting to is we're going to get into, as Max Kaiser likes to call it, the global hash wars, where people will be where countries will be competing for hash rate on a global level because they'll want more Bitcoin. And that'll be the best way for them to get Bitcoin eventually, is by who can provide the most hash power to the network. And so, which a hash war is a peaceful war, because it's not a physical war, it's not a kinetic war. And so, but I think we'll still have kinetic wars. I don't think that will ever end, just because it's just human. It's just in the human nature to do that. And it sucks that that's the way it is. But I think there will be less war. And I don't think it'll end war. I just think there will be less war, because we can't pull from the future to fund a war now. And that's what we do with credit in the current fiat system, is we pull from, in 2008, we pulled from 2015. In 2015, we're pulling from 2025. In 2024, we're pulling from 2050. And so we can pull, there's an endless future to pull from, to have endless war now. But in a Bitcoin world, you can't pull from anywhere. It's the bare asset. It's either you have the money now or you don't. And you can't pull from the future to fund the now. And that's why I think there will be a lot less war because of Bitcoin.
one thing we were talking about a second ago was we're talking about this game that we're playing, right?
Yeah.
And you defined a game as competition with a set of rules, right? I think that's a pretty good, general definition, right? A set of rules where there's competition that operates within that set of rules. And every game has what? Rule makers.
Oh,
rule makers.
Yes.
And so then you also mentioned incentives and incentive structures. And so if there are rule makers, and now what if these rule makers are also playing the game? Conflict of interest, A. And what is the incentive for them to uphold and enforce, and I don't know, maybe we could say that there's rule makers and there's enforcers, officials, right? And I don't know who those people would be in this example. We could think about it, but
the IRS.
The IRS, exactly right. The IRS. And so there's this game where we've got competition happening within a set of rules, but then above that there are enforcers, the IRS, and then there are rule makers that are making the rules that are also playing the game. And so what is the incentive for these rule makers to bend the game in their favor? I would think it's pretty damn high. And then we start thinking about, okay, well, if they're making a certain set of rules, and let's say in terms of Bitcoin and this money world that we're talking about, oh, wow, we could create money for no nominal creation cost. And then we could spend that money here and there, and we could give it to our boys via government contracts here, whatever it is, right? Maybe it's a proxy war. Maybe we're going to give Zelensky another Lambo, or I don't know.
Or maybe we're going to use our fake printed money to buy real assets from real people that produce real things.
Even worse. That's exactly it, Sean. And then think about, okay, well, we don't want everybody to know what we're doing. We don't want everybody to know what we're doing, because then the game kind of collapses on itself like a Ponzi scheme, like it is. Yes. And so then what do? Well, we got to create smoke and mirrors. In 1971, we go off the gold standard. Also created in the 70s was 30-year mortgages and the 401k. And then we start thinking about CPI. We talked about something called inflation earlier, and now they tell us that CPI, the Consumer Price Index, is what inflation is, but it's kind of completely inaccurate, and we can't really understand what's happening underneath the hood, and that's by design. Like, what are we doing? And again, to go back to something we were talking about earlier, these things, these kind of conclusions that we're at right now in this conversation, you can't understand them or even really perceive them to some degree if you don't really understand the other parts first, right? We can't understand inflation. See, and then, it's like, what is inflation? Is inflation, and you already said it. You said it earlier, right? But a lot of people see inflation as, oh, its price is increasing. Oh, fucking, it costs more to buy gas now. Oh, it costs more to buy this. So this asset's more expensive, and that asset is more expensive. And we experience that as prices going up. But, and then it's funny, Uncle Drunk Biden gets up there and he says, oh, it's the corporations. They're price gouging you.
Greedy corporations.
Wait a minute. They're so now it's kind of at this point in the game, right? Where, hey, we're playing this game. We're not playing a game of checkers. We're playing chess, even something more complicated than chess.
40.
And it's starting to become real that if they say somebody else is doing something bad, it's probably because they're doing it.
Yeah.
So Sean, I want to ask you, and I want you to just lay it out on the table. What is the mechanism of inflation?
Oh, goodness. Well, just as what you said, first of all, great explanation of the game. I would say the inflation, just at its simplest form, like we said before, is the increase of monetary units in the overall broad supply of money. And so if you look at inflation like that, because a lot of people, they get confused and they go, well, what's inflation? It's like asking what inflation is for like giving the CPI and saying that this is inflation is like saying the temperature in the United States, the average temperature in the United States is 65 degrees. Okay, but where was it 65 degrees? When was it 65? What months? What, like, all of these issues are important to know. And it's the same thing, like, inflation is 4%. Okay, well, in what? In where? In what items? Is it seasonal? Is all these things? So, like, to break it down and make it easy, just go, what's the total monetary, like, what's the broad supply of money, and how many more units are we creating? And to add to what you're saying about the game, what's kind of crazy is that the people who print the money are the ones who make the rules. And so they're the ones who make the rules, and what they do, printing money, if we were to print money, that would be called counterfeiting. And then we get thrown in jail for counterfeiting money. You counterfeit a $20 bill, you get a knee on your neck for 9 minutes, And so, but if you counterfeit $1 trillion, that's good monetary policy. And so these are the types of things that make no sense if you actually are playing the game and you're not an NPC playing this game. So, the mechanism of inflation, the way that I look at it, and, inflation hurts regular people who aren't close to the money printer. That's the whole Cantillon effect, right? Those who are closer to the money printer benefit from the money printer. Those who are further away from the money printer are punished by the money printer. And so the way it works is that if I make money, dollars, and I want to save my wealth, I cannot save it in the currency that I earned it in. Because if I save it in the currency I earned it in, and we go through 5% inflation this year, I lose 5% of my wealth. So I have to put it into something else. I have to put it into stocks. Well, guess what happens? My stocks go up 3%. Well, nominally, that's still 2% less than inflation. But it's a capital gain if I sell my stock. And I have to pay a capital gains tax on top of it. So you get taxed twice, once for inflation, once for the capital gains tax. I earn my money. And if I want to earn my money, say I'm making $100,000 and inflation's at 5%, but I get a 3% raise every single year. Well, there goes 2% again. But what also happens is I get taxed at a different tax bracket. And my tax bracket does not move in accordance with CPI. So that's another way that you get hit by inflation, because I have a tax bracket that doesn't move with CPI. My wages don't move with inflation. If I want to invest in something, because you have to invest, you can't keep your money in the currency. If I want to invest and I want to sell it to buy something else that I need, then that's another way. So
if you buy things, you got to pay a sales tax. And if you own property, you got to pay property tax.
Property tax. So then you go, what in the world is out there that I could buy if I want the American dream? Because I believe the American dream exists. I believe that it's still here. And I think the way that we can capture it, there's one thing, and it's Bitcoin is more American than the American dollar. The American dollar is un-American. It's anti-American. And Bitcoin is the American dream. And it's the tool that we have.
Okay, Sean, take us into the promised land here. Tell us why Bitcoin? Because you mentioned the halving earlier. Talk a little bit about the halving, some of the fundamentals. The halving, the supply cap. What is mining? What are these node operators? I mean, I don't know what your in-depth knowledge is, but give us a little bit of your thoughts of why Bitcoin solves some of these problems and/or is an escape from some of these problems. Right? You talk about the opt-in, opt-out aspect of it. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, the halving is, simply put, every 4 years, the amount or the issuance of Bitcoin that gets mined gets cut in half. It's really every 210,000 blocks. So we're entering into Bitcoin. Bitcoin basically started in 2009 and 2012. It had its first halving. In that epoch, every block there was 50 Bitcoin that were that was part of the block subsidy. And the next epoch, it got cut in half in 2012. So then it's 25 Bitcoin. And then 2016, it got cut in half. So that's 12 and a half Bitcoin. And then it got cut to 6.25 Bitcoin in the block subsidy in 2020. And now this year coming up in April, will get cut to, 3.125 Bitcoin. And so that's what happens. But if you think about it, it just shows the halving to me is the ultimate signal in all of the noise that we can see. Because if you look at how the dollar is, the issuance of the dollar is not only do they print money, but they print money and it exponentially have to print more and more and more. So it's not like in 2020, they had to, in 2020 they had to print, $3 to $6 trillion, and then that's it. No, it's like we're gonna hit another stage coming up soon where they're gonna have to print $10 to $15 trillion to cover up that. This is like in 2008. 2008 they printed just under $1 trillion, and everyone blew their minds. Like, I can't believe we printed hundreds of billions of dollars. And then now they do that, like they'll print hundreds of billions of dollars in a month at the Federal Reserve. And so, and no one bats an eye. And so then it goes up to 3 to 6 trillion. Then it'll go to 10 to 15 trillion in the next crisis. And that continuation of more and exponentially more dollars will get printed at the same time that less Bitcoin gets issued, and it becomes more and scarce and more scarce and more scarce. So to me, Bitcoin is this thing that no one can control. And I think that's the great part about it, is that it's a neutral money, that there is no leader, there is no CEO, there's no one that's in charge of it. And so we have something that it can't be controlled or co-opted or manipulated by anybody, because it's decentralized, and it's the only decentralized thing out there. And it really is beautiful that we have the halving, that we have Bitcoin, that we have something that shows us true scarcity, and that brings back sound money, which hopefully brings back a lot more order into this clown world that we're seeing, and brings back a lot of truth into the world.
So how do you see, because the Bitcoin blocks aren't, Bitcoin is not exactly scalable. It's not exactly, from a layer one perspective, it's not as scalable as something, say, the dollar. Where's your confidence lie in Liquid.io or Lightning, or even, I don't know, maybe the biggest financial institutions in the world hoarding it and then putting out some form of a CBDC or Tether or whatnot? Where do you see it going? What layer two do you see being the most successful right now in the beginning of 2024?
Great. Yeah. I see a kind of like a mixed bag. Yeah. A mixed charcuterie board of layer two, of layer twos that are coming out. I don't think it's just going to be, you rely on Lightning or you rely on Liquid. I don't really consider an ETF a layer two, and some people might, and that's okay. But yeah, I would say that there's going to be a lot more built on top of Bitcoin, and I agree. Like, Bitcoin's layer one was never meant to scale out to the whole world. Like there's writings of Hal Finney in, like, I don't know when, 2010 or whatever, saying like, yeah, Bitcoin's not going to scale to the whole global transaction output. You're going to need layer twos on top of it. But we're going to have the technology. I believe that. I honestly believe that if we needed Bitcoin at that time to come out, and now we're seeing why. And if someone was able to figure out Bitcoin, then there will be people that are going to be able to figure out the layer twos. And however that comes about, I don't know for sure. I do know that I use Lightning. It works great for me. Like, I've been down to El Salvador. I've paid for a lot of things in Lightning. I've paid for things in in the US in Lightning. Like I've gone to restaurants where they accept Bitcoin over Lightning, and it works just fine. Obviously there's, you're trying to find ways to not have custodial issues. So there's a lot of ground to be made with Bitcoin, with Lightning, with any layer 2. But I believe in a positive future, and I'm very optimistic about it.
So you love ordinals. You're a huge inscriptions ordinals.
Oh yeah, wizards all day. I'm a bigger wizard than Harry Potter.
It's so funny. Maybe to call somebody out, but we actually had Charlie Spears, who seems to be like actually one of the bigger names on the whole ordinal front. We've had him on multiple times, and Nick represents miners. He is a miner himself, but you can almost see the self-interest in the ordinal front. Yeah. Just like right in your face. It's just like, yeah, we get it, guys. Like you're trying to stuff blocks to make higher transaction fees. But do you think as we get to like digital authentication, maybe UBI, maybe not, things like that, is it even possible to do any of these things like in regard to real digital identification without Bitcoin? Because I do find Taproot in the ordinals and inscriptions thing kind of like Lightning. It's like, there's something here. It's not JPEGs on the layer 1 blockchain, more or less, but it could be something. Mind you, we've been trying to get a debate set up with a couple very technical Bitcoin guys with ordinals guys, and they don't want to. As soon as we mention the name, they're like, we don't want to show up. And I'm like, okay, so like you guys definitely believe in what you guys are selling. Like that's really good, but it's so funny. I guess we don't really know how it's going to scale, but. Now, talk about inflation. Inflation on a Bitcoin standard, it will still exist. And it won't be like an M2 money supply go up type thing, because I agree with you. The biggest mechanism, I define inflation by just anywhere you see inefficiency in the market, and money printing is number one. It is number one, no matter what you do. Inflation is always going to be tied to how many units of that money exist. But I look at now to kind of bring it back to the college example. Like we can't even find a way to pay players comparably, yet ESPN throws in and makes about, I don't know, like give or take like $3 to $4 billion a year on ad revenue. And so I guess like maybe it's not too much to speak of now, but it's like how much inefficiency within these corporations and like spending money on ad revenue instead of content, quality of producer, quality of spokesman, quality, you know what I mean? Quality is not the factor here. Do you see inflation in a Bitcoin standard, or I guess do you just see like, hey, if you put enough of your money towards an initiative that does not work, you're just going to go bankrupt? Like, do you see bailouts in Bitcoin? Do you see inflation on a Bitcoin standard, or does Bitcoin eliminate it?
No, I see deflation on a Bitcoin standard, and I'm more like I believe in, I more believe in a future of what Jeff Booth has talked about a lot. If you've read his book, The Price of Tomorrow, really good book, which basically talks about how, he's this, I don't know if he's a billionaire. He's definitely a multi-millionaire CEO based out of Canada, and in the tech world. And basically the whole thing he talks about is that technology brings about efficiencies in markets. So as we continue to get more, as technology grows, then that improves efficiencies. And so as we make inefficiencies more efficient, that should drop the price naturally of things, because it's easier to make things. We can make things faster. We can make them easier. We can make them cheaper. And that's, and so in a world, the issue right now is that we live on a fiat standard. And so his whole mindset was, if we're getting more efficient, why are prices rising? The natural thing should be prices should be dropping. And so not only is a fiat standard, is it printing money, a fiat standard is inflation, but it's also making up for the money that would otherwise be going, like prices would be going down. And so fiat makes prices go up, but it also is printing for this gap where prices should be going down every year. because we're getting more and more efficient in things.
Mm.
So as we move to a standard that would be a Bitcoin standard, then we will have a money that works in line and in tandem with an environment or an economy that actually is technologically advanced, where we can be efficient in what we create, and we can let prices drop, and you can let wages drop, but people will be happy because the things that we buy will be worth less and less. And so the only thing that I see is, will there be bailouts? Yeah, there probably will be bailouts, but on a personal level, or on like a business decides to bail out another business, it's not something that's pulled forward from the future. It's, I have the Bitcoin and I'll bail you out because I think you have a good business, or I like you, or we have a good partnership, or whatever it may be. That's why the bailout will happen, not because the government goes, you're my buddy and you're too big to fail because you got this many employees. Those bailouts are going to be gone, because you can't let a zombie company just exist just to let it exist, because you need jobs and you want the job report to look good because the election year is coming up.
You know, something Griff and I were talking about this morning, and a conversation I had with somebody else this past Saturday. This idea of, right, you've got kind of, let's just say, two layers. There's two layers in the simple example. And the base layer, layer one, is money. It's the base layer of the economy. It's economic transfer. It's economic value. It's money. Mm-hmm. And then on the layer two, you've got all the micro and macro economies, right? And each micro economy, which a bunch of micro economies make up a macro economy. Yeah. In each micro economy, there is supply and demand aspects, right, that make prices go up and down, right? Correct. There's supply and demand that happens on the layer two that make prices go up and down. Okay.
And supply and demand. Exactly.
And so then those prices go up and down in terms of the layer one, which is money, right? So you've got this layer two where, let's say, business is being done. There's supply and demand aspects here making prices go up and down in terms of this layer one, which is the money. But then what happens if there's supply and demand aspects in the money? Mm-hmm. And actually, in this sense, it's more of just a supply increase. There's not really much of a demand increase. There's more so a demand decrease. So a demand decrease with a supply increase, it's like standing on a really steep hill.
Exactly.
And trying to stand flat, but trying to stand like level. You're trying to stand level on a really high graded hill, and then trying to make sense of what is happening on that layer two with the supply demand aspects. It doesn't make any sense. Like the equilibrium is completely thrown off. I mean, we're trying to stand on something that isn't static.
It's short-term volatility, but it's really being driven by the underlying issues, which is the money.
Yeah.
Nick, I was gonna ask. I guess so. Of all the deflation, there's going to be a lot of companies, a lot of money that's been placed already. Probably like before Alexander Graham Bell put out the telephone, there's probably hedge funds even back then that put a lot of money in things that weren't going to work out. Has Bitcoin ruined sports for you a little bit? Like, does that bread and circus narrative at the forefront of your mind? Because Nick and I always talk about, like, I do not. It's almost hard for me to watch sports a lot because in the back of my mind, I'm like, these guys are getting paid a lot of money, but like, and I love the game and I wish I would have made a lot of money playing the game. But where does sports even fit in, really, economically speaking? Do you see like, I guess one, has Bitcoin ruined sports for you a little bit in like watching the NBA or even watching college basketball or whatnot? But two, where do you see like athletics fitting into the actual economy? Because right now it's a huge thing. I mean, economics is a big industry. The advertisement that goes into it is huge. I mean, everything about it is huge, whether it's amateur or not. I mean, there's so many things backed by sports in this country. Do you see it kind of like fitting in over the next decade, or do you kind of see it, deflation coming for sports a little bit?
I mean, yeah, it could come for sports as well. I mean, deflation, I think, is going to be everywhere eventually when we get on a Bitcoin standard. But I think that sports, I don't think sports are going anywhere. because I believe in proof of work. And like if you talk about sports, it's literally who's bet. Like you put people on the field, doesn't matter race, it doesn't matter religion, it doesn't matter anything. It just matters who's worked harder than who has the skill and who doesn't, and go compete, and who has the will once they're out there, you know. And so that's what I like about sports is it's, you know, I haven't lost, you know, there has been some things that have changed about my mindset of sports over the years being in Bitcoin, but I still really enjoy to watch. I really like to watch basketball still, especially guys who've put in a lot of work, and I can tell they put in a lot of work. Then for me, it's still a ton of fun to watch the game. But I think that there will be, you know, there's gonna be a lot of businesses out there that fail. Like there's gonna be tons of businesses that fail, but that's good, you know. That it's creative destruction is what it's called, and that's all that is, you know, a business that doesn't make it. Someone else comes along, they pick up the pieces of that old business, and they try to make it better. And if they succeed in the free market, if they have good proof of work, they provide, you know, a valuable product or service at a fair price, then people will buy, and that business will be successful. And I think sports, people will always want to watch, you know, top level athletes competing, I think.
Yeah,
Sean, tell us. I think this is probably we're running up on our time a little bit here. I want to be respectful of your evening. It's been a pleasure to have you on. I think we could probably talk for a couple more hours, if not days.
Oh yeah.
Where can the people find you? We've got your handle and stuff down here for Twitter. It's at Big Sean Harris on Twitter. But where else can people find you? And tell us a little bit about the Bitcoin halving party that you're putting together.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, you can find me just on Twitter. It's probably the easiest place to find me. And then, we're also doing the Bitcoin halving party with the Meme Factory. And we're so excited we're doing it in El Salvador. And it's April 3rd through the 5th, 2024. It is going to be an absolute great time in El Salvador. I've been down there. I'm going this weekend to go back, and I can't wait to get back down there. And honestly, there's been a ton of people who want to go to El Salvador who just either haven't had the time, they haven't figured out what they do or who they hang out with. And so the having party was just like the perfect timing. You know what you're going to do, you know where you're going to be, you know who you're going to hang out with. And you're going to be in El Salvador. You're going to be able to see the first Bitcoin country. And I'm really excited about it. It's been something that I've been working on with the Meme Factory for over 2 years now. And so to see that it's actually coming to fruition is it's kind of like a dream come true for me. And I hope that we can make this one, we are going to make this one exceptional. And, you know, there's people that have hit me up that said, hey, I have a buddy. We've been talking on Twitter for the last 3 years or 4 years about Bitcoin. The first time we're meeting up is in El Salvador at the halving party. And, you know, I've had other people say, you know, we've been waiting for the right chance. This is the time for us to go because we know what we're going to do. And so it's just been really cool to see all the people that have messaged me, that have been in my DMs. You know, I can't wait. Honestly, it's going to be one of the best times, and people who miss out are going to have a lot of FOMO. And we'll be around in 2028 for the people who can't make it in 2024.
That's awesome. Super. When are we moving to El Salvador, Sean? When are we going? When are we leaving? Like, what's going to make you go?
Dude, I'm trying to get some property down there, so we'll see. Maybe.
Yeah. That's pretty.
Well, Sean, it's been a pleasure to have you on. Hope you have a great rest of your week. It's only Monday here, so we've got a lot of week left. But hope you have a great rest of your week, man. And we'll see you on Twitter. We'll have to have you on again. It was a pleasure, man. Thanks for coming on, Sean.
Okay. Thanks, guys. I enjoyed it. Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Griff.
Man, why is it that everybody we bring on is like, I'm always looking for us, like, because this is always like a information discovery podcast, really, for Nick and I. Like, we're just actually like sneaking on really cool guests and then going like, cool, so we just learned a lot. Like, that's great. So we just stole a bunch of information. But I'm always waiting for us to bring on a Bitcoin guy that I'm like, yeah, he's crazy. I'm going to sell all my Bitcoin. Never. They always are so solid. It doesn't matter what industry or what background or like who they are or what they think. It's
Yeah,
always
every time it's like, let me get on a strike real quick.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's so crazy. I wish I could go to the halving party. I'm going to be a best man at Luke's wedding. Nick, we might need to get you down there. Might need to get you to the halving party in El Salvador. And I need to get the passport ready because that sounds like it's going to be a hell of a thing.
It sounds like it's going to be a ton of fun. I've looked at the page that he's got put up. It looks like there's going to be some cool people there, some fun events, some fun things to do. So, man, yeah, it was a cool conversation to have Sean on. You know, the inflation side is so crazy, and the conversation we had about the game that we're all playing is so strange. You know, it's like this kind of gets into that realm of like the truth can be so bizarre that people don't even want to believe it. That you can't even believe it. It's like, wait a minute, we're playing this game, and let's just simplify the game and say that the game is to get as many dollars as you can, and the goal outcome of the game is to get as many dollars as you can so that you can support a family, so you can live the lifestyle that you want to live, you can do the things you want to do. But then there's also rule makers that set up the rules for this game, and they are also playing the game, and they're incentivized to set up the rules so that they win the game and that everybody else loses the game. And they also hide the fact that that's being done. And the people that are so busy playing the game, you could call that the rat race, right? Sean had mentioned a little bit about Robert Kiyosaki and Rich Dad Poor Dad, assets and liabilities, this kind of stuff, right? Robert Kiyosaki talks about the rat race. That's what the game is. The game is the rat race. And, in some sense, right, like if you're a business owner and you have a lot of autonomy and you're doing well in your company, maybe you're a little bit more separated from the base layer of that rat race. But man, it's crazy. It's like, and the weirdest part about it too is like as Bitcoiners now, you and I, we have done some work to understand a little bit of the underlying system, and now we can't unsee it. Now we can't not see it. And that puts you in kind of a weird spot, because then it's like, well, I've got to lower my time preference so that I'm thinking more long term, but I also have to consume today to live my life. And so then what's the spread there? How much am I saving, right, is the question. How much can I save? And how can I be as efficient with my savings as possible? And like Sean had mentioned, you can't save in that base currency that you earn in, because that base currency gets devalued. The purchasing power becomes less and less by a certain percentage, right? They tell you the target is 2 to 3%, but we know that it's larger than that. And also, you can't really measure inflation. You can only measure it by your own goods and services, right? Like you and I are pretty good at budgeting. We've been very intentional about budgeting the lifestyle that we live. So individually, we could say, well, geez, I mean, this time last year, I paid X amount for these things. That's your inflation rate. Inflation is a vector in the sense that every individual has a different inflation rate based on the goods and services that they purchase. And this whole game, it's all rigged against you. And all joking in the beginning of the episode aside, buy Bitcoin. Just buy Bitcoin. The ETF is a scam. Don't buy the ETF. It's not real. It's not real. It's only exposure to the Bitcoin price. But just so happens that the Bitcoin price has nothing to do with the fundamentals of what Bitcoin is and how it operates. What? What do you mean? It's not just a number go up technology? It's not just a speculative asset? Yes, bro. That's what I'm telling you. You need to understand. Do the work. Read something. Read something. Try to understand. If you don't know what something is, just like Sean said, I didn't know what that was. What did he do? He got on Google and he freaking Googled something and he learned something. And then he started to understand this part. And then there was another question. What is that? Wait a minute. Google. And then we find another answer. Oh, now that makes sense too. Guys, it's so simple. Let's just turn our brain on and let's just ask a question. And if we can't find answers, then it seems like maybe it doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's always super cool. And he's doing a lot of good work for Bitcoiners. He's probably onboarded more people to Bitcoin than we have throughout our podcast, which I think is super important because we talk to G Money. And it's like, hey, we only need like 3.5% of the population to really like understand this thing, which we're going to get closer and closer and closer to that tipping point where there's enough of us to where it's like, even this episode, like it doesn't always make for great content to talk to somebody that like I couldn't agree more with a human being in my life than John. Like it's like so I agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. It's like, no, I agree with you. It's like, of course I do. But inflation is not transitory. Compound interest, as Albert Einstein put, is like the eighth wonder of the world, if you will. And inflation compounds just like your assets do. And so where are we at now? Where are we? And
we're in no man's land, Griff.
We are in the fourth dimension of money, if you will. And it's not a good fourth dimension. I'd like to get this thing back to be much more tangible. And I guess
in the fourth dimension, there are money hungry pedophile vampires, and they are coming after you and your kids.
Oh, no, man. No, man. The guy who like architecturally designed Keynesian economics, he himself is not a pedophile. Please don't look into his history whatsoever. Like, don't at all look into who created
trust.
Like, the rulers.
Trust. Don't verify.
Just
don't
trust.
Verify. Just trust.
Just trust it. Let it go. Yep. Trust that everybody's acting in your best interest. There's no commission package attached to it. There's no bonus plan. There's not. Just trust, and everything will be okay.
Man.
But I guess I want to leave it with this. The real question will really be not when Bitcoin appreciates against the dollar. The question will be when Bitcoiners like Sean, myself, you, when we do have the money, what are we going to do with it that's different than these guys? And I do believe after every single conversation I leave with Bitcoiners, I would 1,000,000% rather trust guys who are putting their time, energy, effort into sound money than, the biggest fiat grifters of all time. I mean, you can come up with the coolest technology you want, but if you won't talk about Bitcoin at this point, I'm skeptical.
Yeah, because Griff, I think that's a great question you're leaving the people with. Hey, if you're not watching us, we've got video on Spotify and on YouTube. And come hit us on Twitter. If you're watching, it's right down here. You can see it. But if you're just listening, it's all spelled out. Nyc Griff Show at NYCANDGRIFFSHOW. Come hit us on Twitter. We want to talk with you. All the links will be down in the description for Sean and his info. We'll see you next week. Peace.